Assalamu alaikum and a very good evening to everyone who joined with us on this academic adda. So this time our theme is, which is the burning topic at this moment, that how should we be back to school? How should we return to the schools being prepared to deal with the students who are not, not just corona affected, they're corona impacted. So how will we deal with these students and the issues that may arise in the classrooms that are not going to be the classroom that we left in March 2020? So as we are going back to school, there will be many issues to deal with, because this pandemic has created the largest disruption of education system in the history, because it has almost affected 1.6 billion learners in more than 190 countries and all continents. So the closure of school have impacted 94% of student population and up to 99% of student population in the low and lower middle income country like ours in Bangladesh. So how can we get back these students to the classroom? How should we educators be prepared to deal with them? Because this is not the issue of just going back to the class and teaching them. There are socio-economic issues as well. We will have students who may not join with us, because it is predicted that some 23.8 million students will have difficulty or maybe dropped out of education system. So we are the educators who do not just teach students. We deal with all these kinds of issues. Like I myself and teachers like me at Daffodil International University, we have dealt with students in terms of economic questions that they face, the corona effects that they had on themselves and their families. So we deal with all kinds of issues that student comes with in the classroom. So the major, the central topic of today's discussion will be that how will we ensure the quality of education that we're going to continue, because some of us, we have conducted the classes online using ICT. That has already added an extra milestone, but again, are the challenges for the teachers, for the educators when they're going back to the classes. So how are we going to keep up the pace of the learners that has been disrupted due to the COVID since March? So, and also finally, how are we going to hold those students who may be dropped out? So the continuity of learning, the dropout issues, the pace of learners, and the physical and mental issues will be the topics that will come around time and again through our speakers' talks. So I'm very thankful to TESOL Society of Bangladesh for allowing me to add into this academic adda time and again. And we had the last academic adda on the alternative assessment, which was quite a success, because we had enormous responses from the participants and also from interested people, those who want to join with us. So to let you know, those who have joined with us so far, that we are open to accept ideas from you. If you are interested, please send us your interest, and then we will check if it is doable. We will include you in our upcoming academic adda. This adda, as Mr. Naushaad Kabir was saying, that this adda is more like definitely an adda. It is not going to be a webinar-like or a conference-like discussion. We don't much want to be formal, but we want to look for the answers, look for the ideas, look for the problems that we educators are facing or will face when we go back to school. So in order to give us the idea of the teacher preparedness, we have teachers from developed contexts like Mr. Subrata Bhowmik from University of Calgary. We have Ms. Anita Chaudhuri from University of British Columbia. And we also have a teacher who knows his fellow colleagues are already conducting face-to-face classes. He will share his experience of interviewing colleagues who are conducting classes in Madrasah. So he himself teaches in one of the madrasas, which is still not open, but we know that Qawmi Madrasah, they are conducting classes, so he will share experience of both madrasa teaching contexts. We have Mr. Zakir Hossain, who is a principal of Robertsongong High School. And lastly, we have Mr. Naushaad Kabir, Dr. Mian Naushaad Kabir, who teaches at Dhaka University. So he will share the multiple challenges that he is taking into account as Dhaka University may also be open very soon. So before we go to the speakers, I would request Dr. Sayeedur Rahman to share the journey of TESOL Society of Bangladesh so far.
Thank you, Rabeya Binte Habib. Let me welcome formally to our 11th, I think this is the 11th webinar. If we talk about 11th activity, actually, this is our second Academy Adda. This idea actually came when Rabeya and I was talking about arranging some kind of discussion where a speaker will be very comfortable, even including the participant will be very comfortable. It's like, you know, we call it chai adda, so that where you don't have any anxiety, any worries, and you can speak your mind out and share whatever you would like to share. So this is the way how we started our first one. It was tremendous success in terms of responses, and then people really liked it. And then we thought that every month we'll come up with a kind of a academic adda. This is our second adda. Before we start, just a brief idea about TESOL Society of Bangladesh. We started as an association way back in 2014. Some of our consultants, so we were actually we're arranging a workshop for British Council, and then the workshop was mainly to produce, write books for tertiary education teachers. And then we thought that all these teachers that we are present, we started coming up with ideas that we need a platform where the second language teachers, English teachers, or ESOL teachers will share their ideas. So mostly based on social media platform. So the COVID gave us an opportunity so that we could start organizing ourselves. We had better time. We had enough time when classes were suspended. So as you can understand, since March, this is our 10th webinar is done, 11th activity going on. As a co-founders, me and the Hamidul Haq, still we are here, still going quite strong. And then every month we are doing something. And there is no stopping actually. Whenever my team asks me, so when to stop? I don't know why to stop, because this is a huge opportunity for us. Because of COVID, you can see that from University of Calgary, then we have British Columbia, and then you have Madrasah, you have secondary schools, you have Dhaka University, all in one platform. And we are all Zooming. So we will be using this opportunity for a long time, I guess. And we started with one webinar about teachers' mental health. So that was the time when we started talking about mental health. And now, after almost 6 months of COVID, now this is the time that we talk about readiness, preparedness. Because if you look at the newspaper in Bangladesh or any of the television channels, we all are talking about going back to class. We started missing our physical classroom space. And for me, like, I started enjoying Zooming, and now after 6 years, you ask me, I don't enjoy anymore. I think I'm looking forward to find my students face to face in a classroom where we used to have Adda and then academic Adda plus everything, and Mia and Naushaad Kabir and me used to have tea in Hakim Chattor. So all these things are actually we are missing. A 5 taka cup of tea, and which can become really important. Now you can understand the entire Dhaka University, because I stay in Dhaka Universities. I take sometimes I take stroll and I take pictures. I post it. A barren land. You can see nobody is around, and we were not very happy about it. So we all are excitingly and anxiously waiting to go back to our class, our comfort zone. Now, to what extent we are prepared for it, we don't know. As we said, Abdullah Al Monsur is the only one who have been taking physical face-to-face classes, and we are only taking online classes. So when we are talking about that, possibly there are issues will come from our discussion. One of the things that we already talked about mental health, Second is the physical facilities in public and private universities, secondary schools. A huge investment required when we talk about sanitization, we talk about safety of our students. Think about Bangladesh, think about classroom facilities, think about classroom size. So a lot of issues will come here. We possibly will be able to discuss and will not be able to come to a conclusion, but maybe from our discussion, we'll come up with certain kind of suggestion for policymakers, for teachers, for our school leaders, the head teachers actually. So I really hope that we'll have a very lovely and lively discussions on a very comfortable zone. So if you want to join us with a cup of tea and a coffee, please don't hesitate. Feel comfortable. I'm sure many of us were looking very formal, but still wearing the trouser. That is the only thing that COVID gave us such a comfort. So thank you very much, Rabeya. Over to you, so you can start it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Without any further delay, may I request Dr. Subrata Bhowmik, who's working as the senior instructor at the Werklund School of Education at University of Calgary. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Rabeya. How much time do I have, may I ask?
5 minutes, sir.
Okay.
5 minutes.
Before Subrata starts, just to clarify to participants at the discussion, we don't have absolute one particular mode of discussion or one language. So unmute yourself. You want to start speaking Bengali, English, or code switch mix, doesn't matter. So use the language you are most comfortable with. Subrata, thank you. 5 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. So 5 minutes is really little time for me to talk about, but I have been asked to just talk about preparedness, like what we can do. So I'm just going to give you a context within 5 minutes so that the conversation can begin. When I think about teaching in the context of Bangladesh, because I'm a product of Bangladeshi school system and universities and so forth, I can relate very well. And so what I'm going to suggest is may not be particularly suitable to the context, but like Dr. Sayeedur Rahman has mentioned, it might trigger some ideas, trigger some discussion with the policymakers to see how, to what extent it may be possible to implement these ideas. So the first thing I did, or I would talk about, is things that we can do just by planning. It does not need a lot of investment in terms of money, in terms of infrastructure, and so on. So because it is free stuff, right? So we can just use our brain and we can implement some of these things. So before opening, we have to be really careful about how we can, because the COVID, what we know, based on what we know at this point in time, it is an evolving situation that we are facing. We know that mass gathering is something that should be avoided. And so having a lot of people together is not a good idea. So one of the things that I think might be helpful is organizing rotating classes or alternate classes. For instance, in the context of schools, whether it is primary or secondary levels, we know that we have class or classes every day. But one of the things we can easily do is, arranging classes by rotation. For instance, grade like all the odd number grades can meet certain days, and even grades, for example, grade 2, 4, and 6, and so forth, can meet on certain days. So that can be one way, so that not all students are coming to school every day. Another suggestion could be, staggered entry and staggered exit, meaning that, not all classes finish at the same time, or all classes starting at the same time of the day. So we can stagger them. One class can start at 9, another class can start at 9:30 and 10, and so forth. Same thing with ending the day's class. Another idea could be staggered recess. We know that there are, I don't know how many recesses are there, but I used to, when I was a little kid, I used to have one recess, if I remember correctly, that was the lunch hour. So if we have all the students, coming out all at once to have lunch, that might inevitably going to make a lot of crowd. And so if we could avoid that, I think that might be helpful. So arranging for staggered recess could be one idea. And then some housekeeping stuff. For instance, we know little kids, they really listen to the teachers or the older people. So if we can create a habit in them, habit formation, that might be helpful. So one idea could be to ask them, for instance, to not share things, not touch things that they bring from home, or we as you know, children, they tend to play together, and then they tend to play share their toys, their pens and papers and notebooks. So having them not do that, just changing their behavior could be another useful strategy. But it has to come from the school and from the teachers, just to explain, be upfront with them that this is what happens, this is something that you have to avoid. And forming that habit of hand washing and all the rest that we normally do. So make sure that students, we help them build these good habits, so that it is not it doesn't go out of control. Another idea could be keeping the students in cohort, so that the teacher, whoever is teaching, should be with them at all times, as opposed to having different teachers and with different groups of students. So if we have a cohort system, then all the students are together at all times, every day. So that kind of helps, and that, in my mind, that kind of limits, if at all, that might limit the spread of the disease. And another idea that comes to my mind is having classes in open space. For instance, especially in rural Bangladesh, there is a lot of open space. There is no dearth of space, of course. For instance, if the weather is favorable, unfortunately, fortunately, we are kind of coming out of monsoon season. So during the winter, especially, the winter is not as bitter as we have in Canada and other Western countries. So it can be easily done if it is planned. For instance, if we can have the students meet in under open sky, even under the trees, just going back to good old days, right? So where when classes would meet under the trees. Even I had classes in my days. There was no electricity in my school, so we used to go outside and have fun under the tree. So that, as we know, that COVID spread is much more likely when it is confined space. So if we can have the classes meet online, in open spaces, so that might be helpful. And the last one, we have to open an open channel of communication with families. I think that is a missing link in our society. I don't think we do it a lot or do it that successfully. So if we could, make a line of communication with the families, making sure they understand the severity, the seriousness of the situation, how the kids can kind of infect many more kids if a sick kid comes to school. So, having them know the risks involved, and making sure that they do not send if their kids fall sick, they do not send the kids to schools to avoid or to prevent infection at school. That would be helpful. So that has to be done by working with the families and making sure that they monitor the health of their children. So these are some of the things that we can do without any investment, just by planning and organizing and reorganizing our resources, right? So it will need a lot of goodwill on the part of teachers, the administrators, the policymakers, and so forth. And then I am going to talk a little bit about, the stuff that will need some bit of investment in terms of investing money, buying stuff. I don't know to what extent it is possible in a society like ours, but nonetheless, we are talking about our children, our future, so we have to make these kinds of investments. So I'm going to mention some of this. Regular things that we hear a lot, like enhancing the hygiene measures in school, having the provisions and facilities of washing hands, wearing masks, and so on. And another idea that comes to my mind is mobilizing our huge garment industry and asking for donations and supplying free masks, for instance, at school, so that at least that can be covered, because it is very minimal investment. And I know that Bangladesh exports garments, and garment industry is a huge industry there, so it can be easily done if we mobilize our society and the people there who are involved, make these kinds of connections, and see doing some kind of mask drive, for instance. And then smaller class sizes is really, really important. In our context, classes can go anywhere upward 50 plus, right? It is very usual class size in the context of Bangladesh. So making class sizes smaller would be helpful, so that students can keep a distance between themselves. And then good ventilation. So the good thing is, in Bangladeshi context, we do not use central air conditioning because of the weather that we have. It is not that extreme. So, opening up the windows, keeping the doors open, and so on and so forth. So that might be helpful. So yeah, I'm just giving, I have just provided the point form discussion points or the ideas. I'm sure that I still went over 5 minutes, but yeah, that's pretty much it. And then we can hopefully, at some point open up the discussion. Thank you so much.
So before we go to the next speaker, I have one question to Subrata sir, and that is that we know, as per the UN policy brief in August 2020, out of the 190 countries that had closures of schools, 90 have reopened schools. So is the government of Canada thinking anything to reopen these schools, or do you have any instructions for that at University of Calgary?
We have already opened schools all over Canada. My kid is going to school. They started first week of September. So there have been, occasional cases of COVID cases in school. So the public health department is very quick to spot and to share. And that can be another point. The public health, the connection, and the, keeping a keen eye on the schools, what is going on, right? So if there are COVID cases, so that those cases can be quickly isolated, and then further measures can be taken. And then also informing the parents that, look, this is what has happened in this school, so make sure that you keep an eye on your kids' symptoms, and make sure that if necessary, sending the kids to hospitals and so on. But yes, in Canada, schools are open.
Also the university?
Well, universities, what is happening in our university, our classes are, most of our, I would say 70% of our classes are online, and 30% are meeting face-to-face. Only the classes that require face-to-face meetings, for example, classes that involve, for example, laboratories and so on, engineering classes, science classes. So those are the only classes. And the smaller class sizes, like 7, 8, 10 students, like higher level classes that require face-to-face meetings. Other than that, most of our classes are online.
All right. So let's now move on to the only person who will share his colleague's experience of what they're doing at Qawmi Madrasah. He is Mr. Abdullah Al Monsur, who is teaching at a madrasa in Sylhet. So, Mr. Abdullah Al Monsur,
Yes. Can I start, inshallah?
please.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inna alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillahi wa barak. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, authority of this organization, TESOL Bangladesh, maybe its name. So thank you for joining me with you. I'm actually a teacher of Arabic department. So I'm not expert in English like you. So sometimes I can use my mother tongue, Bangla language.
You can use all the time, don't worry.
No problem.
Okay.
আপনি পুরো বাংলায় বলতে পারেন এবং পাওয়ার পয়েন্ট শেয়ার করবেন তাই না একটা?
না, একটু পরে পাওয়ার পয়েন্ট আসছি। আচ্ছা, আমি বলবো পাওয়ার পয়েন্টে যে বলবো ইনশাআল্লাহ।
So let's have Bangla and English both, because I have seen you in one of the live programs at Facebook. So you're comfortable using English. Use a Bangla problem.
Okay, thank you. So there are two types of madrasa education in Bangladesh. Okay, one of them, it's called Qawmi Madrasa education, and other type education, it's called Aliya Madrasa. So Qawmi Madrasa authority তারা গত 2 মাস আগে, আমি কিন্তু দুই শিক্ষা ব্যবস্থার সাথে জড়িত আছি। আই এম ইনভলভড উইথ বোথ অফ দ্যাম। কওমি মাদ্রাসা আমি পড়াশোনা করেছি সম্পূর্ণ কওমি মাদ্রাসার পাশাপাশি আলিয়া মাদ্রাসা থেকেও দুই শিক্ষা ব্যবস্থারই সর্বোচ্চ ডিগ্রি আমি গ্রহণ করেছি এবং শিক্ষকতা করছি। আই হ্যাভ বিন টিচিং সিন্স 2014 ইন আলিয়া মাদ্রাসা। বাট আমি কওমি মাদ্রাসা গত 2 মাস আগে সরকারের কাছে তারা আবেদন করেছেন। ওকে, থ্যাংক ইউ। সো বাংলাদেশের সরকারের কাছে তারা আবেদন করেছেন 2 মাস আগে কওমি মাদ্রাসা রিওপেনিং এর জন্য। তো সরকার কিছু শর্ত সাপেক্ষে কওমি মাদ্রাসা খোলার অনুমতি দিয়েছেন। যখন প্রতিষ্ঠান খোলা হলো ওই সময় আমি ভিজিট করেছি বেশ কিছু প্রতিষ্ঠান এবং আমি দেখেছি, কথা বলেছি তাদের সাথে, আমি কিছু ইন্টারভিউ গ্রহণ করেছি, আমি কিছু ছবিও আমি আই কালেক্টেড সাম পিকচার্স কিভাবে ক্লাস হচ্ছে না হচ্ছে। তো আমি কওমি মাদ্রাসা সম্পর্কে একটু ব্রিফ দিয়ে রাখি। কওমি মাদ্রাসা হচ্ছে সম্পূর্ণ বেসরকারি, ইটস টোটাল নন গভর্নমেন্ট এডুকেশন। এটা সম্পূর্ণ এটার কওমি মাদ্রাসার সিলেবাস, তারপরে অ্যাডমিনিস্ট্রেশন, ফাইন্যান্সিয়াল সাপোর্ট টোটালি এটি সরকারের নিয়ন্ত্রণের বাইরে, সম্পূর্ণ পাবলিক এটা পরিচালনা করে। তো কওমি মাদ্রাসা 2 মাস ধরে ক্লাস চলছে। তো আমি আজকে সকালে একটা ইন্টারভিউ নিয়েছি একজন প্রিন্সিপালের কওমি মাদ্রাসা, ওনার নাম হচ্ছে মাওলানা এহসানউদ্দিন, সিলেটের একটা প্রতিষ্ঠানের উনি প্রধান। উনি প্রতিষ্ঠান চালাচ্ছেন 2 মাস ধরে। তো উনি যেটা বললেন, এখানে কওমি মাদ্রাসা খোলার পর থেকে কিছু প্রতিষ্ঠান খুবই স্ট্রিক্টলি সরকারের যে স্বাস্থ্যবিধি এবং যে স্বাস্থ্য সচেতনতা এগুলো খুবই স্ট্রিক্টলি মেনটেন করছেন, আর কিছু প্রতিষ্ঠান মোটেও এগুলা ফলো করছেন না। তো ওনাদের যাদের বক্তব্য আমি নিয়েছি তাদের কথা হলো যে তারা খুবই শক্তভাবে স্বাস্থ্যবিধি অনুসরণ করছেন এবং খুবই ক্লাসরুম গুলো ফিজিক্যাল দূরত্ব বজায় রেখে তারা ক্লাসরুম করছেন এবং প্রতিষ্ঠানে যখন স্টুডেন্ট, টিচার্স এবং স্টাফরা প্রবেশ করে তখন তারা চেক করেন, এই তাপমাত্রা চেক করে তারা সেখানে প্রবেশ করাচ্ছেন এবং হ্যান্ড স্যানিটাইজারের ব্যবস্থা আছে, এগুলো তারা নিয়মিত করছেন। এমনকি 5 ওয়াক্ত দৈনন্দিন নামাজও তারা মাদ্রাসার ভিতরে তারা আদায় করছেন এবং জুমার নামাজটাও অন্য সময় বাইরে গিয়ে পড়া হতো, কিন্তু এই সময়ে তারা বাইরে যাচ্ছেন না। আর একটা ব্যাপার হলো যে কওমি মাদ্রাসা কিন্তু 95% রেসিডেন্সিয়াল, আবাসিক। এখানে কিন্তু বাইরের স্টুডেন্ট আসে, আলিয়া মাদ্রাসা বা স্কুলের যেভাবে বাহিরের পাড়ার মহল্লার বা দূর থেকে স্টুডেন্ট এসে পড়তে পারে, কওমি মাদ্রাসা কিন্তু ওরকম না, সম্পূর্ণ আবাসিক। মানে হয়তো একটা প্রতিষ্ঠানে 500 স্টুডেন্ট থাকলে 10, 20, 30 জন হয়তো বাইরে থেকে এসে পড়তেছে বাসা থেকে, কিন্তু বাকি সবাই মাদ্রাসায় অবস্থান করে কিন্তু পড়াশোনা করছে। তো তারা বলছেন এমনকি জুমার নামাজটাও তারা মাদ্রাসার ভিতরে তারা আদায় করছেন। তো কিন্তু এরপরেও তাদের যে বক্তব্য, সম্প্রতি প্রতিষ্ঠান খোলার পর থেকে হঠাৎ করে দেখা গেল প্রতিষ্ঠানের মধ্যে স্টুডেন্টদের জ্বর, সর্দি, কাশি হঠাৎ করে বেড়ে গেছে। তখন বেড়ে যাওয়ার কারণে কিছু প্রতিষ্ঠান অলরেডি তারা আবার খোলার পরে বন্ধ দিয়েছেন। কোনো প্রতিষ্ঠান 1 সপ্তাহ, কোনোটা 2 সপ্তাহ পর্যন্ত তারা বন্ধ দিয়েছেন। বন্ধ দিয়ে তারা আবার খুলেছেন। এটা হচ্ছে একটা এক্সপিরিয়েন্স। আর ওনারা যেটা বলছেন সেটা সাধারণ নরমাল ফ্লু, সাধারণ সিজনাল বাংলাদেশে কয়েকদিন পরে পরই জ্বর সর্দি আসে, এভাবেই সাধারণভাবে ওনারা নিয়েছেন। তো একটা বক্তব্য একজন প্রিন্সিপালের বক্তব্য হলো যে এর আগে কোনো সময় এভাবে হয় নাই, জ্বর সর্দি হয়েছে স্টুডেন্টদের, কিন্তু একসাথে একটা প্রতিষ্ঠানে একদম শিক্ষক থেকে শুরু করে স্টাফ একসাথে এতজন অসুস্থ হয়ে যাওয়া, এটা কিন্তু হয় নাই আগে। তো এটাই প্রথম, যার কারণে তারা কিছু প্রতিষ্ঠান অলরেডি বন্ধ দিয়ে দিয়েছেন, আবার তারা ওপেন করেছেন। তো এটা একটা মাদ্রাসার সামগ্রিক অবস্থা আমি বললাম। এখন যদি আমি মেইল করেছিলাম, একটু স্ক্রিন শেয়ার যদি করতেন, কিছু ছবি এখানে আছে। আকিব ভাইয়া করবেন নাকি আপনি করবেন? রাবেয়া
জি জি জি, আমি করছি।
আচ্ছা আচ্ছা। আমি আলিয়া মাদ্রাসার কথা আমি পরে আসছি, আমি শিক্ষকতা করছি মূলত আলিয়া মাদ্রাসায়, এটার কথা আমি পরে হয়তো ফ্লোর পেলে আমি বলবো ইনশাল্লাহ আমরা কি কি। এটা দরকার না, এটা হচ্ছে রিসেন্ট আজকের একটা ছবি। একটা প্রতিষ্ঠানে আপনারা জানেন গ্রামের মাদ্রাসাগুলোতে বন্যা কবলিত হয়ে যাচ্ছে খুব। আচ্ছা, এই যে এটা কিন্তু পরীক্ষা চলছে, এটা একটা পরীক্ষা কেন্দ্র। এর আগের ছবিটা একটু দেখান তো। এটা হচ্ছে পানির একটা ফিল্টার তারা লাগিয়েছেন আধুনিক, এটা এর আগে ছিল না, পানীয় সুব্যবস্থার জন্য এটা লাগানো হয়েছে। এটা পরে একটা আসি আমরা, এর পরের পিকচারটা দেন। হ্যাঁ, এটা একটা পরীক্ষা গ্রহণ চলছে কবি মাদ্রাসায়। হ্যাঁ, ওকেই। আরেকটা ছবি, আচ্ছা এটা এটা দেখেন, স্টুডেন্টরা যখন প্রবেশ করছে তখন তাদেরকে এই তাপমাত্রা এগুলা চেক করে কিন্তু প্রবেশ করানো হচ্ছে। হ্যাঁ, নেক্সট। হ্যাঁ, এটা এটা হচ্ছে ক্লাসরুম, এটা হচ্ছে ক্লাসরুম। ইটস আনাদার ক্লাসরুম। এটা এখানে স্বাস্থ্যবিধি পরীক্ষা করা হচ্ছে। হুম হুম হুম। মোটামুটি এগুলোই ছবি। আচ্ছা, তো এই ছবিটা আছে, আমি এই ছবিটার একটু ব্যাকগ্রাউন্ড দিই। আগের ছবিটা একটু দেখান তো, এই ছবিটা, এর আগেরটা। আচ্ছা, এই ছবিটা কিন্তু সরি, এই যে একটু আগে যেটা দেওয়া হলো এর আগের ছবিটা, হ্যাঁ এটা এটা একটু রাখেন। এই ছবিটা আমি একটু ব্যাকগ্রাউন্ড দিই, এটা কিন্তু বাংলাদেশের এটা না, এটা আমি নিয়েছি পাকিস্তানের একটা মাদ্রাসার ছবি। তারা কিন্তু যখন বাংলাদেশে কড়া লকডাউন, খুব বেশি কেউ ঘর থেকে বের হয়নি, ওই সময় তারা কিন্তু প্রতিষ্ঠান খুলে দিয়েছে অলরেডি। যখন প্রচন্ড লকডাউন, ওই সময় তারা পাকিস্তানে তারা ওকে তারা খুলে দিয়েছে, ওই সময়ের এই ছবিটা সংগ্রহ করেছিলাম আর কি। আচ্ছা, তো মোটামুটি এগুলোই আমার কাছে ছিল কবি মাদ্রাসা সম্পর্কে আপাতত তথ্য। আর পরবর্তীতে আমি যেহেতু আলিয়া মাদ্রাসায়, আই হ্যাভ বিন টিচিং ইন আলিয়া মাদ্রাসা সিন্স 2014. If I give another time, so inshallah I will explain next. So that's all about me for the time being.
স্লাইড শেয়ারটা একটু অফ করো। আমি একটা মনসুর সাহেবকে প্রশ্ন করতে চাই। খুবই ভালো লাগলো মনসুর সাহেব, একদম রিয়েল পিকচার্স। কারণ আমরা এখনো আমাদের ঢাকা ইউনিভার্সিটির যেহেতু সিদ্ধান্ত হয়নি, কাজে আমরা দিতে পারছি না। আপনার এটা আমার কাছে খুবই ভালো লাগলো। আমার একটা জাস্ট প্রশ্ন, আপনি যেহেতু পাকিস্তানের একটা রেফারেন্স দিয়েছেন, আমাদের কাছে আপনার কমি মাদ্রাসা একটা রেফারেন্স আছে, এই রিওপেনিং এর হেলথ হ্যাজার্ডটা কি আপনার কি রিএভ্যালুয়েট করেছে? মানে কতগুলো স্টুডেন্ট এফেক্টেড হয়েছে এখন পর্যন্ত রিওপেনিং করার পরে? বা আপনি যেটা ফ্লু বলছেন, আসলে স্পেশালি রুরাল প্লেসে, গ্রামে গঞ্জে আমরা যেটা আমাদের বিভিন্ন টেলিভিশন প্রোগ্রামে দেখছি যে দে ডোন্ট বিলিভ হোয়াট ইজ কল কোভিড। বলে কোভিড কি, কোভিড তো আর নাই, কোভিড বলে কিছু না। এটা এটা কয়েকদিন ধরে আমরা দেখতে পাচ্ছি। আমি গতকালও কয়েকটা টেলিভিশনে দেখছিলাম, গ্রামের একটা কৃষককে জিজ্ঞেস করছে, সে একটা ধমক দিয়েছে, কিসের কোভিড, কোভিড বলে কিছু নাই। এটাই। এখন আপনি মাদ্রাসা রিওপেন যে করেছেন, আপনি থেকে একটা জিনিস শুধু আমি জানতে চাই, আপনি কি হেলথ হ্যাজার্ডটাকে রিএভ্যালুয়েট করে দেখেছেন যে এটা ইটস লাইক এ সায়েন্স, লাইক আব্দুল্লাহ মনসুর, মানে এটা ওপেন হয়েছে। আমরা পুরো ওয়ার্ল্ড ওয়াইডই দেখেছি ওপেন হওয়ার সাথে সাথে মেলবোর্নে যেটা হয়েছে, স্কুলগুলোকে খোলার সাথে সাথেই আপনি জানেন যে বন্ধ করে দিতে বাধ্য হয়েছে। আপনি যে 2 মাস ধরে খোলা রাখার পরে আপনার কি মনে হয়, মানে কোভিড কে স্প্রেড হয়েছে, নাকি আপনি মনে হয় না খোলা সত্ত্বেও আপনি এটাকে পেরেছেন, মানে স্বাস্থ্যবিধি মেনে এটা এখন পর্যন্ত ঠিক আছে?
একটা ব্যাপার হলো এই যে এখন তো টেস্ট না হলে আপনি অ্যাকচুয়ালি এটা পাওয়া যাবে না। এখন টেস্ট মোটেও হয় নাই, মোটেই হয় নাই বললেই চলে। স্টুডেন্টরা অসুস্থ হয়েছে, হ্যাঁ অসুস্থ হয়েছে, খুব বেশি পরিমাণ অসুস্থ হয়েছে, আবার সুস্থ হয়ে উঠেছে। বললাম না, অসুস্থ মাত্রা এত বেড়ে গিয়েছিল, প্রতিষ্ঠান বন্ধ দিতে বাধ্য হয়েছে তাৎক্ষণিক। ইভেন শুধু স্টুডেন্টস নয়, টিচার স্টাফ সহ প্রতিষ্ঠানে দেখা গেল ম্যাক্সিমাম লোক হঠাৎ করে অসুস্থতা বেড়ে গেল, তখন প্রতিষ্ঠান কিন্তু বন্ধ করতে বাধ্য হয়েছে। তো এটা আবার তারা আবার রিওপেন করেছেন যেহেতু সুস্থ হয়ে গিয়েছে, এই একটা
এই
ব্যাপার।
মুহূর্তে কি অবস্থা? মানে একটা আপনার কথা মতো একটা রাউন্ড বোধহয় শেষ হয়েছে, মানে সবাই অসুস্থ হয়ে আবার সুস্থ হয়ে গেছে, এখন কি অবস্থা?
এখন ওই স্বাভাবিক, এখন ওই যে আমি যে এখন পর্যন্ত আজকে সকাল পর্যন্ত আমি যেটা খবর নিলাম স্বাভাবিকই আছে, তেমন কোনো একটা সমস্যা ফেস করছেন না।
এবং আপনি যে মাদ্রাসায় আছেন?
আমি তো মূলত আমি যে বলি আমার ব্যাকগ্রাউন্ড, আমি শিক্ষকতা করছি আলিয়া মাদ্রাসায়। আমার প্রতিষ্ঠানটা বন্ধ আছে, আমরা অনলাইনে ক্লাস নিচ্ছি। কিন্তু আমি জড়িত আছি এই কই মাদ্রাসার সাথে। আমার হ্যাঁ, যেহেতু আমি পড়াশোনা করেছি কই মাদ্রাসায় সম্পূর্ণ, এই হিসাবে আমার পরিচিত জন এবং আমার কলিগস এবং আমাদের পারিবারিকভাবে পরিচালিত বিভিন্ন কই মাদ্রাসা রয়েছে।
আরেকটা প্রশ্ন, সেটা হচ্ছে আমাদের একজন স্পিকার, উনি সুব্রত ভৌমিক, একটা ইনভেস্টমেন্টের কথা একটু বলছিলেন, যে এই ধরনের স্যানিটাইজেশন বা এগুলো, আপনি যে ধরনের ডিভাইস দেখালেন যেগুলো ইউজ করছেন, এটাতে একটা কস্ট আছে। মাদ্রাসার এই ফান্ড গুলো কোথা থেকে আসে? মাদ্রাসার মাইক্রোফোনটা একটু অফ করে দেন। জি বলেন।
মাদ্রাসার বললাম যে কই মাদ্রাসার ফান্ডিং যে ব্যাপার, কই মাদ্রাসার ফান্ডিং সম্পূর্ণ এটা বেসরকারি। কই মাদ্রাসার মধ্যে আবার দুই ধরনের শিক্ষা, কিছু আছে প্রাইভেট, স্টুডেন্টরা বেতন দিয়ে, স্টুডেন্টরা মান্থলি একটা ফি দেয়, এটার মাধ্যমে পরিচালিত হয়। এটা এক ধরনের কই মাদ্রাসা আছে। আবার ম্যাক্সিমাম কই মাদ্রাসা হচ্ছে জনগণ, মানুষরা সেটাতে টাকা পয়সা দেয়, মানুষের দানের মাধ্যমেই পরিচালিত হয়। তো এগুলা থেকে মূলত এগুলা ব্যবস্থা করা হয়।
আর আপনি অনলাইন ক্লাসে এক্সপেরিয়েন্স কেমন? আপনি কি 100% স্টুডেন্টকে কভার করতে পেরেছেন?
জি না, এটা অনলাইন ক্লাসে কিন্তু বেস্ট লেকিংস আছে। আমি যদি পরবর্তী সময় পাই, একটু লম্বা সময় নিয়ে,
তাহলে আমরা ওটা পরবর্তীতে বলবো। আর রাবিয়া উইল কাম ব্যাক টু হিম about online class. Next, Rabeya, please.
Come back to you with the question that whether these openings of Qaumi Madrasa have any influence on what your school, Shahjalal, Jamea, Islamia, Kamil Madrasa at Pathantula, Sylhet will have. Right? Okay, so let's now move on to our next speaker, Dr. Mian and Naushaad Kabir, who will share the teacher preparedness for the opening of Dhaka University, if it is going to be opening soon. Because for him, the challenges are of multifold. We know that Dhaka University, there are many students, those who will be staying in halls. So how they're going to have the reopening, or what do the teachers of the university think of the cautions to be taken or the issues that may arise. So please welcome Dr. Mian and Naushaad Kabir. He teaches at the Institute of Mother Languages at Dhaka University. Sorry, he teaches at the Institute of Mother Languages at Dhaka University. Sorry. Please, over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Rabeya. I think you have given the right hint when you talked about what will happen when we reopen after COVID. Now, the main challenges, in your questions or cues that you have provided to us, you have highlighted the issue of mental and physical health. I will talk about that, but at the same time, I would also try to look at the situation from some other perspectives. So you know that in Dhaka University, most of the students actually live in hostels, and because Dr. Subrata Bhowmik is from Dhaka University, he knows, and the situation hasn't changed much, that in the dormitories, people literally huddle together, and you know, in the officially a room is allocated to, let's say, 4 students, but in reality, the room is occupied by the double number. I mean, 8 or even more than that. And then there is also something called guest room, which is available in almost all the dormitories. And guest room is a place where, you know, the freshman students are put together. I mean, the students who cannot get a valid seat somehow manage to stay in those rooms, and the number will be unbelievable if you know. I mean, in some of the guest rooms, you know, 20 students, sometimes 30, sometimes even 40 students uh, stay together. So they do the flooring, you know, they sleep on the floor, they study on the floor, everything, because they don't have enough space to place their cot or bed, whatever you say. At the same time, if you also take into consideration the lavatory support system, I must say that it is not very developed, and the sanitation issue is not ensured there. Even in the normal time, we receive a lot of complaints from the students. Now, if we open the university, when these students will come, definitely because they have been away from the institute for a long time, I believe that if I put myself in their place, so definitely I will be very excited to go to the university and meet my friends. So I will hardly care about all the rules and regulations given to me when I come back. And by nature we are fond of addas that we are doing here. Okay, so I mean the students will definitely be doing so. They will be inviting their seniors, their relatives into the hostel. They will be having a kind of night long addas. It will be very difficult to control them, to control even the entire campus. I mean, the campus is now within our control. The proctorial team has actually taken every measure to maintain the security of the teachers and also the staff who are staying on the campus. But once it is open, it is out of control. It's difficult. If you come to the classroom situation, and again I will say that uh, you know Dr. Subrata has the first-hand experience, and he knows that our classrooms are big, but the number of students is even bigger. So sometimes we have to take classes in some of the classrooms in arts building using hand mic, and sometimes it is not possible to monitor whether the students sitting at the back of the classroom can really if they can really listen to your lectures, or if you give some instructions whether instructions are reaching out to them. It is difficult. So it is the fixed furniture in many classrooms. You will see fixed furniture. I mean the high bench and the low bench, and in the place of four students, maybe six students sit. So when the university opens, we cannot do anything with a space, and we have to literally accept this thing, and we don't know how we are going to solve these problems. By the way, this is not the situation in every classroom. For example, if you come to our institute, in Institute of Modern Languages, the condition is slightly better, but still I will say the kind of a space that we need to maintain safety from each other cannot be maintained in our classroom, even though the IML classrooms are better than many other classrooms in Dhaka University. Coming to the mental issues, now this is a genuine concern here. Okay, like as a teacher, I also know that many of my colleagues have received numerous phone calls from students saying that they're frustrated and upset because they are away from the campus. They are missing their studies, and they are also missing the urban lifestyle, which they have already been habituated to. Because most of the students in Dhaka University come almost from all parts of the country. So rural, semi-urban, and also remote areas where it is even difficult to get access to electricity, and sometimes the network. Okay, so I was going to mention the digital divide issue, and the digital divide is not for the ignorance all the time. Sometimes it is about it is due to the affordances, not only of the students or the teachers, but also affordances of the mobile companies. Even though they advertise on the television that a 4G network is available all over the country, but that's a sheer lie. Okay, no doubt about that. Even if you go to the a nearby district, let's say Kumilla, one of my students live in Kumilla, and he missed most of my classes because he doesn't get access to network. But Kumilla is not very far from Dhaka. Okay, so that's another issue. But the main mental thing is, affected by many other factors, mostly I will say the economic factor, because in the socio-economic background of Bangladesh, you know that students in public universities are sometimes the bread earners of the family. So the students come to Dhaka, they study, but at the same time, they support their family by doing numerous kinds of job, among which uh, going for tuition is the most common. I mean, they teach some secondary or primary students. They support their family. Now, for the last 6 7 months, they cannot support their family because they are very good students. They got chances to study in Dhaka University. The family has started expecting a lot from them. So when this COVID situation took place, they actually literally couldn't support their family. Rather, they became a burden because they went back home, and they are on their parents earning or salary, whatever you say. So they couldn't provide any extra support. When they come back, the situation will not change because people are already financially supporting with half salary, lots of uh, firing from the service holders. Okay, many people lost their jobs, so there is a huge decrease in people's earnings. So I mean, they're more concerned about the basic human needs like food and shelter, in Dhaka. So education has started getting less priority, and many parents, even if you read the newspapers, that parents are writing to the schools about reducing the school payment, okay, because they cannot pay, and they are also asking, because we are not sending children to schools, why are you taking the full payment from us? Because we are teaching our kids, we are taking the instructions from Zoom or Google Meet, but we the parents are teaching, so why are you taking full payment? So uh, they have kind of out and out denied the idea of paying the full payment. So it's a kind of circle, right? So when one component is affected, the other components are equally affected. So these students coming to Dhaka will also have this kind of pressure in terms of supporting their family. At the same time, the knowledge that somebody in the family is suffering from COVID, and there will be some losses. Some family members may unfortunately pass away. There is the risk of losing friends, even faculty members. Some of our faculty members also passed away because of COVID, and the trauma. I mean the risk, the apprehension that anytime I can be affected by COVID, and then what is going to happen to me? Now, this is the bleak scenario surrounding them in terms of both the physical and the mental hazards and risks. So I do not know whether our academia is completely ready to address all these things. Logically, I don't see anything, but what I see is I leave most of the things to destiny. But at the same time, I would like to say that if you I don't want to leave or end my discussion on a pessimistic note. I want to say that sometimes probably your if you look at the thing from the humanistic perspectives, rather than from the scientific perspective, by maintaining physical distancing or social distancing, it is important. But if you value, if you embrace your family values, uh, if you maintain the family bonding, and let's say if you show empathy and sympathy to the people, uh, also awareness raising activities, you need to be aware and you need to make people aware of the things, changing the mindset, because as Said Bhai was telling that many people in the village think that there is no COVID. In fact, it's a
Sorry
normal
to
flu.
interrupt, Naushaad bhai. You
Yeah.
mentioned about physical distance,
Yes.
and I have a similar question from Mr. Muhammad Imdadul Haq, who kind of has this similar teaching context that you have. He told that he has 130 students in his class. Usually a 6 feet bench is for 4 students. As a teacher, how can he help maintain the physical distance when students are going to come back to
No,
classes?
we cannot help. We cannot help. That is what I'm trying to. That is what I'm trying to say. I mean, if we reopen, we actually cannot do anything about it. So, Dr. Subrata gave us some ideas like taking classes under the trees, which is a very nice idea. But if you also look at the situation like this, if all the classes are taken outside the classroom in Dhaka University, there wouldn't be an inch to a stand. Okay, because we have around 30,000 students in the campus, as far as I know. So it will be again a huge difficulty, and we don't have that kind of a space. But more than that, I think the most important thing is changing the mindset. Okay, so you cannot suddenly increase a space or create a space in the classroom, but definitely you can maintain your own measures. Okay, I mean, you can sanitize yourselves regularly, you can use the mask, and you can also create awareness among the people. It's a very challenging thing, so maybe we also need to read history. I mean, how did people go about the issue when pandemics or emergency situations like this happened before? Like what happened after 71 in Bangladesh? I mean, what happened to the students in 71? Could they write their exams? And how did they solve the problem? Now that we are lagging for around 6 to 7 months, and I think it's going to extend. So our historical knowledge is also going to help us. So we need to be aware. So these are some of my observations.
Naushaad, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll come back to all the speakers when we'll be asking questions. So we'd love to give it to Anita Chaudhary now. She has been very quite patiently listening to us. Anita, if you could please unmute yourself, the microphone,
Of
please.
course. So I'll quickly go into my very few slides that I put together for the session, but I must begin by saying thank you, and it's been really enriching listening to all of you. And I think Dr. Naushaad Kabir offered a real good segue into the direction I'd like to take in terms of the humanistic approach to things. So you'll find that with the presentation set, what I gathered was, bringing together the ideas that, the very practical tips and all the photographs, they're very realistic. The ground realities kind of show through what the speakers so far have come up with, and very valid questions like how are we going to deal with this. So with that, I'm just going to go into my screen share here. So just bear with me tiny
You have
bit.
co-host.
No,
Okay.
it's okay.
Can you
You
see my screen? Yes. Okay.
You need to just screen enlarge your screen. It's fine now.
Absolutely. Okay.
Perfect.
So back to school readiness for the academia, right? Like, how are we doing this? So the quote that really struck me when, that abstract was sent across was this idea of never ever normal again. Typically, I'm a very optimistic person. So these phrases kind of catch me as in, there's no doom. That's okay. We are going to recover from it. So the socioeconomic impact on learning, the digital divide, equitable and inclusive learning practices, things that we have been bringing up in the discussion so far are crucial, naturally crucial. And of course, part of this does feature, right? Like you wanted to bring up those topics. But then again, if I look back, what was normal? Like, did we not have socioeconomic impact on learning? Did we not have the digital divide? And again, the equitable and inclusive and the diverse learning practices, they have always been our objective, learning objectives, critical objectives for any schooling system. So then moving forward, looking, so pre-COVID and post-COVID, right? That's another coinage that we come across. So looking into new beginnings then, right? So it's not about never ever shall we ever be normal. It's about that's okay. Let's not be normal. That's not what we teach our students, like fit into the mold. That shouldn't really, that's never the case, right? Like we all evolve with time and age and, you know, the very many other things that happen in our lives. So what about with socioeconomic impact, and what are we doing with our learning communities that can make for a different experience? The digital divide, I think, has been addressed in different ways, but then the digital divide is, of course, to do with affordability, access, but also to do with how we learn. Not everyone learns well on Zoom or via media, or not everyone is a visual learner, right? So there are different kinds of learning practices. And I think we have the opportunity now to deliberate on what works and what doesn't, right? Sometimes we do not have the option, and even then we are surviving it. So the idea of equitable learning practices becomes very real, very current, very, I mean, it has to inform the discussion that we are having today, and we continue to have in different groups and others that we plan. So equitability has to do with using the group's knowledge and the equal distribution of that knowledge, the understanding that that we are all equal in this learning journey. So educators and students interact to form the learning practices, and that's what makes it equitable, and also the inclusive aspect comes into the picture. So when we are thinking about, oh, okay, so I do not have certain equipments, gadgets, and therefore I cannot. So I have that 6 feet long bench, and that's where my students have to sit. Those are essentially not inclusive and equitable in nature. So how else do we do it? Do we take it outside under a tree? And again, this is not a new idea. We have evolved from there. So do we go back to certain? So again, you know, seemingly a process of evolution. We are going in a cyclical process, or going back to our roots, not to go back into what was traditionally held as, you know, this is how learning should be, but then to again evolve better from it, right? Like, what do I do under that tree is more crucial than where we learn. So the learning aspect still remains the focus, right? So then we have to recognize that disruption that we are constantly talking about is followed by innovation. And what are these innovative measures? And those are being deliberated, whether we are just separating ourselves, you know, just the 2 feet or the 6 feet distance between the tables. How is it that is a dispenser enough to keep us at bay from COVID-19 today, and tomorrow there'll be another, maybe, I hope not, fingers crossed. But then again, these are the realities of life, of the climate change, of the very many other discussions that follow. So moving on, I kind of, you know, you had a great tie with the UN, particularly to do with the educational aspect and how we are moving forward with that. So I thought I would go back and bring up a few, you know, bits of quotes here or there, and a few numbers, just so that we are able to contextualize what is it that we are talking, and from that bring forth a few discussion points, ideas to deliberate on. So yes, we recognize the depletion of financial assets and the constrained psychosocial well-being that we cannot but talk about, right? So we must therefore, the first bullet point would say, provide the most vulnerable learners access to a continued learning experience. So access to a continued learning experience can take very many forms. It can be done digitally. I find my mother doing it all the time through WhatsApp. So the concept of WhatsApp University, you know, perhaps evolved, you know, largely across, which is, you know, using the word university is a misnomer, of course, but then it's working, it's making things work. Also consider the amount of evolution that has happened, growth that has happened with the technologies that we use. So Google has Google Meet, Zoom has its own platform, and then there's Blackboard Collaborate, and very many other kinds of platforms are very quickly evolving for us to use. Of course, access is a factor. The whole idea that I do not have a smartphone, how do I become smart then? Now that is something as educators we need to consider, like how is it that we make our students smart without essentially asking them to invest in things that may or may not be required for that learning, right? The next point here is about internet use, which hits directly at the digital divide. Developed countries have 87% of users, and developing 47. The least developed countries are at 19%, right? Excuse me. So that's a combination of things, and we need to recognize the second point about creating affordable and engaging learning opportunities. Can we think beyond the net? Can we become communities of learners, and can we figure out how is it that we spread the word, right? And spreading the word has never been difficult for us humans, right? We have always communicated, and how have those other learning opportunities or communities of practice developed, right? What have we done? With the madrasas bringing in people together, like how have that system, that educational system evolved, and how do they position themselves vis-a-vis the public universities, the private universities, and the very many other schools, etc. The last one I have here on the slide is about addressing the learning crisis that UN points. And yes, we are in crisis mode, accepted, and therefore we have to take steps to look back into what is it that we are teaching. So we have to be reviewing our own learning objectives, the course learning objectives that each of us teach or take as students, as learners, the outcomes that we desire out of them, and the assessment procedures, right? And they do need to change to address this learning crisis. There's no hesitation in, suggesting that our education policies need to evolve as a result of, and they evolve only for the better, right? COVID is only a temporary reality, but when we move forward post-COVID, these changes should be able to carry forward and not necessarily go back into something we did, oh, well, a year ago, 2 years ago, and that was better. I don't think that should be essentially the mental frame when we sit down and think about the changes that need to occur. So the next slide, and the final one I have here, is about, again, a few other discussion points I'd like to bring up. So encouraging community-based learning practice. What does that mean? And how to develop stakeholder engagement. And by stakeholders, I don't just mean educators. I also would want to propose that administrators, and this is already happening, administrators, educators, learners, parents, other social groups that we are part of need to connect, communicate with each other to figure this out. The focus on student voice and identity is quite critical, right? Like what my student needs is something I have to hear. I have to listen to them intently to be able to figure what should happen, what new learning opportunities must come out of it. What is it that we are preparing them for, not just during COVID, before, but post-COVID, looking into the future. So establishing those learning priorities. Dr. Sarah Eaton puts it very nicely. She's a scholar who works in academic integrity and such practices. So I thought I would bring up the priorities that she identifies as far as learning is concerned. So compassion over content, right? Do I have to drill in a lot of content, or do I be aware of the fact that, yes, we are all struggling and putting up a very brave face to make it happen, to make learning happen? Decency and dignity over deadlines. I think all of us teachers have been pretty categorical about here's when the exam has to be, or here's when the assignment needs to be submitted. And can we be more flexible? So that flexibility, that aspect of, again, being inclusive by allowing the other's voice to show and participate in the decisions that I might, happen to have unilaterally made in the past. Pedagogy over punitive action. I think that's a very, nice way of thinking about, am I focusing on learning, on creatively developing my student body, or am I thinking about putting them into frames that in the real world really is not impactful, effective in any way? The next thing is about disruptive innovation. We are in a mode of disruptive innovation. Online learning is disruptive innovation, and we are not done yet. We have to continue to disrupt and see where it takes us. There's no ultimate goal deadline here in place. There is going to be a post-COVID scenario, and we have to continue to figure the gaps in learning and how big are those gaps. Can we live with those gaps? I mean, don't we already live with gaps? And therefore create opportunities for mindfulness and well-being as part of learning. I think it's important for us to recognize that when you and I connect, we connect because there is this compassion, this idea of human beings coming together and having a cup of tea, right? Whether it's your evening, my morning, the fact that we are able to connect and talk about our well-being is crucial for any learning development. And I think that's what I hear from my students as well. That's what you mentioned. And I mean, not just Dr. Naushaad Kabir, but the others who have spoken before us. When the students are complaining about this, not feeling great about not going to the university, it's not so much about missing out on learning, but the learning is also social. It's about the group bonding. And I'll end with that because I'm sure there's a ton more that can be talked about. The whole aspect of psychosocial well-being is crucial for us to realize that mental toughness is what we are. Mental toughness is what keeps us going. And mental toughness, the research recognizes as crucial for us to survive, stay, and make improvements, whether it's in our learning journeys or other aspects of life. So thank you very much.
Anita Chaudhary, thank you so much. Rabeya, we don't have much time. Can we give the floor to Mr. Zakir Hossain?
Yes.
And followed by Hamidul Haq. Mr. Zakir Hossain, are you ready? You need to unmute your microphone, please.
Can you hear me, sir?
Yeah, you're audible. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Well, I'm really happy and honored to have the opportunity to join the session, today's session, especially that is being titled "Back to School." That is starting the school functioning. First, let me introduce myself. I'm Zakir Hossain, working as principal at Robertsongong High School and College at Rangpur. And the school is situated in the divisional city headquarters. And there is 1,000 students, and we have been imparting teaching learning from grade 6 to 12 here. Some 28 teachers have been engaged to teachers academic activities. And I just have I just have noted some my experience and observations and recommendations, especially on today's session titled "Back to School," and which I would like to lead out. Thank you. Back to school. The world has been facing severe challenges in every sector due to the ongoing pandemic COVID-19 crisis. Of all the sector, the education sector has become the worst hit in the country. Almost all sectors have started functioning, but not the education sector. Educational institutes remained shutting soon after beginning of the crisis since March 17 of the year till today. School, colleges, and universities globally, however, resorted to online platform in a bid to minimize the academic losses of the students. And Bangladesh context is no different. Here, I would like to mention when the school was declared to remain shut due to the pandemic, due to the crisis, we in our school sat for a meeting and decided to shift the teaching learning in a virtual way. Of course, we did not reach all of the students because most of the students of my institutes are very poor. They can't have the ability, they don't have the ability to afford the internet cost. But we still keep on trying to reach the students, imparting the teaching learning through virtual classroom teaching. Okay. Many private run, especially the kindergarten schools across the country remain closed due to fund crunch. The owner or the authority of the schools failed to pay the teachers and employees. A significant number of students will be drop out in the primary and secondary level of education, apprentice experts and teachers. And I think it will be a challenge for all of us, especially who the teachers who are imparting teaching learning, especially in the rural areas, in the northern areas of the country, will face the difficulties, will face the challenges, and we'll have a huge, I think we'll have a significant number of students drop out from our in our secondary and higher secondary level if we after opening the school or after opening the institute. In some countries, schools are opening through the crisis, though the crisis has not yet overcome. Teachers and students have been instructed to maintain some health codes and regulations strictly over there. And we learned from our expert educators, from our expert speakers of today's session, that the schools in Canada have already been opened. The Education Ministry of the concern and the concerned directorate of our country and the officials and the education officials have also been started discussing to open a school, but had not reached any decision yet. I think there is a lot of challenges to restart the school or to reopen the school as the pandemic has not yet overcome. We need to set up a guideline and health regulations before opening the schools. I think if we are directed to open the school, it will be really great challenge for us, especially for us, for our institute, like our institute, to restart the functioning, because our institute is not government; it's an MPO-run institute. So it will be really very challenging for us to restart the school, to restart the face-to-face teaching learning. I think we need to set up some rules and regulations, especially to maintain the health codes in order to remain safe. We need to set up our individual planning beside national policy and regulations. It's really very challenging to handle the schools children as they are in adolescent age. Before restarting the school, we, the teachers and the governing body members, must have an internal discussion, especially to create a massive awareness among all stakeholders of the schools to maintain the health codes and rules in order to ensure a safe environment in and around the school for the students. We must have cleaning operation in the campus. We also need extra budget for buying hygiene materials and sanitizer. It is noted here that many of these schools, especially in rural areas, don't have the ability to buy the health and hygiene materials for providing the students if they are instructed to open the school right now. However, we have to sit with parents and the local leaders and brief to them about the school planning for the health regulations so that they can impart the message among the children earlier. We also have a request to them to pay special attention and support for the children as well as the school. In our context, that is from our context at Robertsongong High School and College Rangpur, there are around 1,000 students in our school. We have to run a school and college section in the same campus. It will be very difficult for us to run the both section at the same time in this context to maintain the social distancing. Of course, we'll choose for shifting system for both the section. We can run a school in morning and college in daytime to avoid the hassle and jam. We need to have cleaning activities in the campus for both the section. We'll have certain rules and strict instructions for the students to maintain the health codes during the schooling. Additional teachers will be in charge to supervise the students' movement and activities. And one thing that's very important I would like to mention here, students must be taught the core skills and soft skills. Of the skills which I would like to mention especially, communication and collaboration and health is very important. And another thing is very important that I would like to mention, developing self-control and empathy and cooperation is very important to ensure quality education. We'll also have some recommendations that must be followed by the students. Students should be instructed to use mask. Students should not be allowed to share anything or pass out anything to anybody. Students should be instructed to sit at proper distance, to sit at proper distance. During coughing and sneezing, they should cover the mouth and nose with elbow. They should use sanitizer before entering and leaving the school. And they must keep a water bottle for remaining for the cleaning activities. So thank you very much. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. So we have Mr. Hamidul Haq. Yes, Hamidul Haq, sir. Can you?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, we can hear you. So, like Daffodil, you have been also conducting online classes since March. I don't know about AIUB, but in Daffodil International University, we teachers, we are going to the campus once a week now. So we are getting ready to reopen. So what's your take on that for AIUB?
Okay, we are still having our classes online. This is the consecutive second semester. When we went online in March, we are in fact in the middle of the semester. And then we started a new semester. We had worries whether or how we are going to take the classes, because there will be students and who don't know each other, and the teachers. The teachers also at the same time don't know the students. But somehow I think it went well. Whatever. For the next or coming semesters, we are not yet decided. We are waiting for the government decision. Government has not given any decision yet on this regard, whether we should go back to our classes. But meanwhile, I would like to share some of our experience during these online classes. Dr. Naushaad already talked about the constraints in the private universities, public universities, the constraint they are likely to face. See, in private universities, you can understand the space is a huge constraint. Not all the private universities have their own campuses. Few obviously have. And within the limited space, how they're going to manage, that is a huge question. Even you have all the preparations. We are talking about sanitizations or other preparations, systematic preparations or arrangements. But within that limited space or limited campus, how that is going to happen, we yet do not know. Another thing is when students come back to Dhaka and they actually live in rented apartments, and students usually share the apartment and they're away from their parents. And I'm going to actually share my experience as a head of the department during last 2 semesters. We had many students getting infected. As a department head, I had to deal with these students. They said yes, they got infected, they were corona positive. In some cases, their parents were infected and they had tough time managing their parents. Now here we are talking about students actually away from their home in rented apartment, several students actually together away from their parents. In both cases actually we are worried about this, because if students get infected, what will happen to them? We'll take care of them. If their parents get infected back home, who are actually going to take care of them? We also had several faculty members from my own department who actually got infected by COVID-19. I don't know how many of you went through this situation. We had tough time, and unfortunately, one of my colleagues from English department, she is still in ICU, and she has been in the ICU for last more than 3 weeks. So you see, it's not going to be easy, I'm telling you, because most of us, we talked about physical environment, but psychologically, how are we going to cope with this when we have students in Dhaka away from their parents, and students are concerned, parents are concerned? It's not going to be easy, I'm telling you. Yes, we have to be more empathetic, we have to be more flexible, because I still have students who haven't attended their quizzes, who are yet to take their final assessment. Yes, they will have time. We had students who say sir, I have problems managing my parents because all my family members are infected and I'm the only one who is taking care of them. Well, that's another side, because most of us, we talked about the physical environment. Yeah, obviously, as I said, in the private universities, that is a huge concern, because most of our private universities in Dhaka, they're confined to 1 or 2 or 3 buildings. They do not have open space, so you cannot even think of classes outside the classrooms. That's not possible. And managing, in fact, the classes where you have in a very congested room, you have 40 students, let's say, and you have huge traffics when the classes break. So obviously, this is what infrastructure is one concern. Maintaining the health, hygiene, or the sanitization, another concern. Equally, I am also concerned about the psychological part. It's not going to be easy. Students are really exhausted, as I can see. They post in the Facebook. They are tired of all this. Obviously, they are waiting for the time when they can get back to their campus and go back to their normal life. Initially, what I have seen, that students were very much worried. When the second semester started, they actually were reluctant to join, but eventually they joined in huge number. They were worried about especially the online classes, internet connections. They're worried about their assessments, because it's not going to be easy. And still I receive email from my students that because of poor internet connection, possibly they could not attend their final assessment. And obviously the teachers also have their own concern. It's not easy actually to take classes online or take assessment online. You have to put possibly double effort. Because we talked about we don't know our students, so possibly you have to give extra time. Now even you see, I receive messages from my students at 1 o'clock at night. We are connected all the time because we have electronic classrooms, so students are always sending messages, and they have their own concerns. So teachers, I'm sure all my teachers, as they told me, they're always connected to their teachers. They're receiving messages. And obviously there are problems to solve. Teachers also faced problems with the assessments. Most of our teachers, they actually agreed on one thing. They said, look, written assessments are not reliable. The most reliable assessment is taking interview. So our teachers are taking interview, one-to-one interview, which are not easy, I'm telling you. They have 4, let's say, different classes, and they're taking interview with one-to-one. I mean, so you can imagine their situation. And there are also like several English teachers, they got infected, and one is in ICU. So if we have to go back to our campuses, I don't know how we are going to cope with this scenario. We are still hopeful, we are exhausted, we are tired, and we want to go back to our classes. No doubt about this. Thank you.
Right, you are, Hamid sir. With the changes that we have due to the disruptive innovation in education, we also have the challenge to train our teachers for better training in new methods of educational delivery, as well as support for inclusive education. So we have few questions. Let me ask the question, and if any of you has the answer, please. We have one question from Ms. Jahanara, who told that students are not staying at their home, they're enjoying their time like vacation. The reality is we cannot connect most of the students through online class. So isn't it convenient to reopen schools? A part of the students have already left their education also. So
We can give it to Subrata, because our first speaker, we can go back to Subrata. If Subrata, would you like to answer to or respond to that question?
students are enjoying their time like vacation.
According to parents, I think parents are tired of their children at home. They want them to send back to school.
I mean, it is a double-edged sword, isn't it? Like, yes, they are taking it as vacation, but then I believe that is what the crux of the matter is. Sometimes we do not recognize the severity of the situation in our part of the world, and there is this misconception that COVID is a hoax, and it is just I have my family back home in Bangladesh, and I'm in touch with them, and the way people are living their life, it is quite unbelievable, like the way things happen. And I'm not surprised to hear that from the way it is perceived by some parents that the government has kept the schools shut, colleges shut, so it is ruining our children's life and so forth. That is, in a way, to me, is the perception of the society in general. So I don't know who to point finger to, whether it is the communication on the part of the government, or just to send the message across the public that yes, it is absolutely not normal situation right now that we are in. And given the situation, we are trying our best. We are doing our best to keep us safe, so that the next phase can happen. Because like what I'm hearing from everyone, most of you, like looking over your shoulder at all times, it puts a lot of mental like strain on your mind. And we are talking about we are talking about intellectual activities. Intellectual activities cannot happen when you are not in good mental shape, right? It is literally impossible. So when you see that, like from that perspective, it is no brainer that schools are shut, colleges are shut, and the administration around the world, around the country, they are hesitant to open up the schools because, like I said, you are constantly looking over your shoulder. So I think the government or the educational administrators, they have done the right thing by keeping the schools shut. At least that is what I think. But then I don't know if it is possible, or if we are at a point when when we can kind of start reconceptualizing how, of course, digital accessibility of digital technology is not an option, like it is not equitable around the country. And also digital literacy with that, like not everyone knows how to use a Google Classroom or Zoom and so on and so forth. So that is another barrier. So with that, with all these kinds of constraints, maybe we may have to reconceptualize our education going forward. But I have absolutely no doubt in my mind, as far as I am concerned, that the government and the administration have done the right thing by keeping the schools shut. Uh, and it should be shut until and unless situation improves, dramatically.
So our next question will go to the most optimistic speaker among us, that is Dr. Anita Chaudhary. The question is from Ms. Khushida Akhtar, who asked that what would happen to the remote area students, those who don't have technology support? What would happen to the teachers and other professionals who have lost their jobs? How would they meet their daily and necessary needs? Let's answer it from teacher perspective. The teachers, those who have lost their jobs, and students, those who don't have ICT support. How can they actually make up? Because we are talking about equitable education and the inclusivity. So how can we ensure that?
Okay, I'm optimistic, but I'm not blind. I recognize that there are lots of challenges in front of us. And things do not, like jobs once lost, they do not come back as quickly. And they don't necessarily come back to you, right? So I don't have a solution for how jobs will come back or how the person now unemployed will go back into the market, etc. But I can tell you from personal experience, growth is not dependent, and by growth I mean in educational terms, in preparedness for the market, that's not limited to an institution. The world now is so vast and open and accessible that one is, if one chooses to, if one is able to, access material. I mean, think of all the material that you and I are creating over the net as written pieces of paper that we are distributing, taking pictures, and these are all repositories of knowledge that we are creating that people should be able to access. Now, the challenge that we are dealing with is the aspect of how do we make it available in an open platform? Open educational resources do exist. Can universities and schools make these resources available on their platform? Can they digitize these materials and spread it? Like, the spread has to begin somewhere, right? Like, just like COVID started with one person, wherever that person was located, but it has had a global reach. And I think, much like the virus, using the metaphor in a very odd way, I suppose, we should be able to figure out what options do we have to give access to us all, this body of knowledge. So when MIT comes up with edX and the slew of courses that it offers, free, it is up to me as a learner to log in. Of course, I'm not blind to the idea that the resource, the connection of just being available on the net is critical for me to get to that knowledge. But it can be spread via talk, right? And I think our subcontinent is particularly very well known for that whole engagement between people, that we have these addas, and they don't, I mean, this is new, right? Connecting, having an adda online is new, but we have had addas all, like, I've seen my uncle's grandparents, like, forever, generations previous to us, have met, have talked, and have distributed knowledge. Can we make that an objective, right? I suppose that's where it needs to go. And I think that's where the community aspect comes into play, the networks that we create, that we buy into. It's not always the digitized, I mean, that's where the world is going and is situated, right? Like that's where we have to have, some sort of reach into, but then that's not the end all of it. As I said, this is a disruptive moment, and I think we need to make the most of this disruption. And innovation must take different forms. And it is up to us as individuals to make that one effort to put it out. Whether it is about, if I have access to a printer and I can print stuff and distribute in my local community, maybe that's it. Maybe that's all I do, right? But it is about being, effective and active practitioners more than, of course, recognition is absolutely crucial to then know what is it that I want to do next. But that next step needs to be deliberated on.
Thank you.
Can I add a small thing just to I think Anita made an excellent point about given the situation, what is it that we can do, and we can do easily, and absolutely. I mean, having this open communication, just the way we are doing right now, or having a repository of knowledge in some form can be done. But then going back to what I was saying earlier, I think we have to set clear goal, and the goal should include, it should be that our safety, our children's safety, health and safety should be number one priority, right? And once that is compromised, then nothing can happen really. And I think everything needs to be seen from that perspective, that even if there is like a thread of doubt in our mind that our children's health and safety would be compromised in a situation like this global pandemic and health hazard, I think we should not really consider opening things up. And again, going back to what Anita was saying, given the circumstance that we are in, what options we have available, what we can do, those should be the priorities for us, rather than opening everything up and getting things more complex and complicated and putting ourselves at risk.
Very true. And in fact, I wanted to add one thing, that in Daffodil, we are teaching, making use of Google Meet and also Moodle. So there are open educational resources and platforms like Moodle, Edmodo. This can be used for repository. So, and where where students can access all the resources, even if they don't have the access to classes, online classes. So I share the live classes, recorded classes with students, and they check it later. Which at the end of the semester was highlighted the most by the students, that they liked this feature of my class the most, that they had all the recordings in there, so which they could check later, even if they did not attend the online classes. So that can be done to increase the inclusivity. So we have two more questions, which I will summarize rather, because Ms. Naushaad Hassan and Saida Shimu have asked similar question, that how can we ensure that students are having quality education through online platforms? So that is a big question, and definitely a challenge for educators, that whether the online classes that we are giving, we are not seeing students' faces, as Hamid mentioned, that we don't know the students. In summer semester, when we were teaching students, we did not know the students face to face, especially the first semester students. We did not know them much, but we were teaching them online. And we're not always having the camera open. So how can we ensure quality education? And there is an added question from Ms. Shimu, that how can we ensure effective assessment through online platforms? We had one academic adda on alternative assessment in the last month. So not sure whether we do have time to answer that question, but I would like one of the speakers to address this question, that how can we ensure quality education for all through online platforms?
I can jump in if you don't mind. Yeah. Well, the way I see it, I think our kids are smart, and today's generation of kids, they're smart. So first thing is, we have to trust them, and we have to, from a teaching perspective, from our perspective, we have to be showing integrity. Just by looking at the way things are right now, if you see, the extent of evolution that has happened since COVID started, it is quite immense. Have we ever imagined that we would be able to meet like this and having this conversation, from different parts of the world? But it has been possible only because of our ingenuity, our integrity, and smartness of thinking and open to ideas. I think that is the only thing that will take us forward. We will be able to face the challenges that COVID right now, or even any future challenges that will present themselves. So I think the first thing is trusting our students, trusting their abilities, and then the second thing is showing integrity, or work with integrity. We have to ensure that, yes, it is going to be a lot of work, because many of us, we are teaching online. We have to respond to several emails every day from our students, answer their question, and that is the integrity that you need to continue to show. But then at the end of the day, we also have to trust our students that they will do their work, and they will be able to fit in this new world, or this new normal, as we call it. And then to be open to these new ideas, new ways of life, new ways of teaching, new ways of education. Yeah, these are the things that will take us forward. I'll just give an example, and that will tie with the question that you received about assessment. Instead of midterm exam and quizzes, we have to figure out how we can develop exams that can be taken home, that can be done at home, and yet we can kind of test our students' knowledge, right? So there are, in the Western world, there are these open book exams where students can keep their books open, and then they can still we can still assess them. So these are some of the alternative ideas, again, being open to new ideas, new ways of doing exams, new ways of teaching, will hopefully help us to
Thank you,
take
sir.
this further.
We are also doing open book exams, and then using platforms like Kahoot and other online platforms to assess students. And there is, in fact, one entire session on alternative assessments during this pandemic. Ms. Shimu, you request to check the YouTube of TESOL Society of Bangladesh. The session is there, the recorded session is there. So Anita madam want to add something. So you raised your hand, please.
I just wanted to quickly add to what Subrata was talking about. The basic minimum that we can fall back on is our curriculum still. And we are not throwing the baby with the bathwater. We still have that. And when we devise and propose what is that learning, what is quality education, and such questions come up, we still have the curriculum. That's not changing immediately as we speak, right? Of course, there's curriculum development and revisions and all of that. I think Subrata already touched on the assessment part of things, and you yourself, Rabeya. But let's stick to what we do best with the curriculum, with the understanding. And I think Professor Hamidul Haq would be very appreciative, as head of the department or the chair. Having us going to very many new distinct ways is not what we are choosing or should be looking to do. right now. There has to be that common basic element. Thank you.
Okay, so we don't have any more questions. So if our speakers want to add something or say something.
Just would like to just briefly comment on what Subrata Bhowmik and others saying. The question that came in my mind actually is like, what is next, and uh, how long should we wait? Mani? Because the pandemic is, we are going through uncertainties, and we understand that the decision of reopening can be very dangerous because it's talking. We are talking about our lives of our young children. We can take risk about us, but not with our children. As Subrata Bhowmik already mentioned, the shutting down was possibly the right decision all over the world. Now, what is next actually? How do we go back? Should we go back? And how long should we wait? From a global perspective, from Subrata, Anita, and others, because I'd like to know what you were thinking. The vaccine, the treatment, whatever. What do you predict? How do we deal with this pandemic?
I would jump in, Dr. Rahman. I think that question is on our mind, like all of our mind, actually. Let's not forget that we have a long road ahead of us. There is no doubt about it. The thing is, is it ideal situation to be in? Of course not. Is it affecting our children, their education, their well-being? Of course, for sure. But then again, people might disagree with me. As far as I am concerned, like I said, I just want to be clear in my mind. If I was the education minister or one of those who would make decision, I would just set those priorities, that this is what I want. I want the health of my colleagues, the teachers, the principals, the staff members at schools and colleges, and of course of my students. That should be the priority for me. Come what may. If that means giving away one year of my students' academic life, of my children's academic life, so be it. So there is nothing we can do. It is as simple as that. But then it is true that it is unpredictable. We do not know what is going to happen 6 months from now, 1 year from now, especially being at the mercy of the developed world, because we have so many constraints. We do not have a lot of resources. We do not have a vaccine of our own, so we have to depend on the rest of the world when they will bring the vaccines to the market, and then that is the only time when we'll be able to even consider having vaccinated. So that is a good question, but again, like I said, we have to be mentally prepared. We have to protect each other, protect ourselves, and I think the health, and it is absolutely unfortunate to hear like what Dr. Hawk was speaking earlier. Even to think about it, to see your colleague in the ICU, or your colleagues suffering from this menace of disease. So I do not want to see that. That will break my heart, and that will I would not be able to be in the right frame of mind and stand in front of my class and deliver my lectures. So I do not have a direct answer to your question, but that is the best that I can
Thank you.
to.
I think no one has. We need to still discuss, and maybe we need another adda to continue with that. Because we have almost there 2 hours. I'd just like to some of the issues that came from today's adda, and that all the participants were there. We had beautiful discussion starting with Subrata Bhowmik. He gave some beautiful ideas. He was just thinking, rotating classes based on the roll number. It's like traffic and jor and bejor numbers. And he's also talked about different shifts, which Mr. Zakir Hossain also talked about in his school and college in Rangpur. Uh, Bhowmik also focus on housekeeping orientation with his students, sanitization, good habits, which is very excellent. And children, we need to train our children about good habits and sanitization, and also talk about cohorts so that you can avoid mixing of different students groups. So maybe a single teacher with a cohort and this. And a beautiful idea, I love that open space, especially talking about rural Bangladesh. When I was a teacher in Jahangir University, we had serious problem with classroom. We used to go to the open space theater, open air theater and give lecture, sometimes under the tree. And students used to love that. So the good idea about open fields in the rural, but I'm not sure considering the Bangladesh where you have rainy seasons and other, how to what extent we can take them to the field. But it's good idea that we need to think about. From the Qawmi Madrasah, good ideas came and talked about, and we also saw the pictures, how they tried their best with the limited resources of Qawmi. You know that these are funded, some of these are locally generated funds. Still, I could see that they tried their best. And it's also the residential facilities. So we are sure it's very difficult, residential madrasa and maintaining all the sanitization and others. We had Dr. Naushaad Kabir talking about Dhaka University. He rightly pointed out the residential issues. We all know that it's a very residential system that is operated. And we know about gono room and the guest room, and how do you maintain the physical distance in a gono room. Then he talked about mental issues. He also talked about how students were benefited when they were in Dhaka. All went back to rural places without job, without extra income to support their parents and themselves. So are we really ready? And the faculty members, we lost some of our colleagues in Dhaka University. So you understand the trauma involved. Even the residential place that I stayed, 2 teachers died. So you see, you can understand our own situation. We had a beautiful presentation, Anita Chaudhuri, with her proud presentation. I love her community of learning the practices. One thing she really highlighted is the curriculum. We have something that is the curriculum. That means even we are online, we can still go on with the class. So possibly we will not miss much. If the COVID ever, I don't know whether we can get over with COVID, then at least you're happy that some part of curriculum we could cover online. So she also talked about all the online resources. Of course, the digital divide remains in Bangladesh. So when we are talking about access to online resources, we also need to ensure connectivity, which we're missing in Bangladesh. These so-called the slogans are 4G and 5G. And even within Dhaka, we get disconnected often. So with that, all these beautiful issues came up. And then we ended with still unanswered questions. We could not give the answer. How long we should wait, because we don't know. And even first world countries are confused about vaccination. And then Bangladesh comes. We know the Bangladesh government is already possibly part of 2 initiatives we heard about, Oxford one and another one at this moment, Chinese one. We are not very sure what is going on. So there are political governments sometimes take political decisions, but we are the general people. We need to look at the real practical situation. We all are here today, the teachers, students, and all the stakeholders. We are the right one to possibly give a good direction to the policy makers. From my side, from the TESOL Society of Bangladesh, this was all. I think, Rabeya, do you think that we need some points you can add actually?
No, it's fine.
We don't have more time to attend questions, but we have a list of questions we can send to our discussants. We have collected the question which we can send to our discussion. Any other point?
We should also take the idea that you have already mentioned that staggered entry and staggered
Yes,
entry.
the staggered entry. Yes.
That is something that we have to work on.
Yes.
So I think that's all. Thank you very much for joining with us. Thank you, Subrata sir. Thank you, Anita madam. Thank you, Abdullah sir. Thank you, Zakir Hossain sir, and then Dr. Mian Kabir. Thank you, thanks to our participants for joining.